mindfulness. Oh my God. This isn't when we're going to sit around and go,
Oh, we might do some of that later on.
Oh, great. I can't wait.
Oh, you're such the eternal skeptic.
That's my job.
Well, and it's my job to enlighten you.
I'm Wayne Lively, and the voice you're hearing in the first two episodes, along with this one, annoyingly, is Tommy Angelo, poker author of The Elements of Poker, great professional poker player, my mentor, and tormentor.
Ooh, good one.
So we're going to talk about mindfulness. What is mindfulness?
Mindfulness is the opposite of mindlessness, a word we're all more familiar with, which is unfortunately how most of us go about living our lives. It's like we're puppets on the string of our mind, and we just follow it around and do whatever it wants us to do.
So we're going to empty my mind?
Well, we're not exactly going to empty your mind. We're going to take a look at what's in there. We're
going to take out the trash.
We're going to attempt to take out the trash. That's exactly
all
right.
right. I can dig that.
One of the most common misconceptions about all this Buddha stuff is the idea that, you want to empty your mind or you want to get rid of your feelings, when actually it's just the opposite of that. What you do with mindfulness is you observe what's going on inside of your mind. You observe your thoughts and your feelings.
Okay, I'll be observing my thoughts.
Right, you'll be observing them and you'll be witnessing them is another word.
I'm not a very reliable witness.
You hit the nail on the head, because the truth is that almost none of us are ever a reliable witness. We very, very rarely put effort toward actually witnessing what we're doing and witnessing what we're thinking. So that's like an introduction to mindfulness as it applies to our thoughts. It's also about what we do. It's about being mindful of our body when we're moving around, when we're driving, when we're standing, sitting, it doesn't matter. It's just about paying attention to what we're doing. It just so happens that mindlessness is our normal state of mind. The truth is that mindlessness is our default operating system.
That's sad.
Let me ask you something. Were you aware of yourself just now saying the words, "That's sad"?
Of course not. It just came out.
So when you're walking around, let's say you're walking to your car, are you aware of your feet on the ground?
Only when I stumble.
Right. That's exactly right. When you're falling to the ground,
well, then I'm aware of the ground.
That is mindfulness. That's naturally occurring mindfulness. The whole idea of intentional mindfulness is to be that aware of what's going on, even when it's not a disaster. And the way it applies to your mind is when you're angry. And this is why mindfulness just melts anger away. Because let's say somebody does something that really pisses you off, and you're angry. You have this heat inside. That's mindless anger. But if you have the wherewithal to stop and observe your anger and literally say to yourself, "I am angry right now," that's mindfulness of your anger, and that will cause the anger to go away.
Okay, so what has this got to do with playing poker?
Well, what it has to do with playing poker is that stress is the type of thing that causes us to tilt. It causes us to play bad. Stress and anxiety and all the negative feelings. And so mindfulness is a tool to help us undo all that stuff. So once you get in the habit of practicing mindfulness, it directly relates to how well you can play poker and how much money you're going to make.
So I don't tilt anymore.
Well, you'll tilt less. So let's keep this related to regular life, because one of the great things about all this is that if you work on practicing tilting less in your regular life, that will carry over into your poker. So let's just tell me something about something that tilts you in regular life.
Okay. I hate being late.
Okay.
Being late just tilts me. The other day I was meeting my girlfriend for dinner, and I was late. I'm at a big intersection, and I'm pulling up in the left-hand turn lane. And I've got time to make the arrow, and a truck pulls over right in front of me. He's crawling. And now I have to wait through another light sequence. It takes like 5 minutes. I was so pissed at him. And I was thinking about her sitting there in the restaurant waiting for me, all nervous, wondering where I am. And I'm not going to enjoy my meal because of her worry, and I'm late. And this asshole truck driver.
Let me ask you something. What if you could snap your fingers at that moment and not be stressed? Would you do it?
I've been waiting for you my whole life, Mr. Genie. Snap away.
Okay, what I'd like to talk about now is breathing. This is the best tool there is for practicing mindfulness. And the reason is it's always with us. Every single moment of our lives we are breathing. And so the act of being mindful is the act of consciously putting your attention and putting your effort on something that is happening right here and right now. Now you can do mindful walking, mindful lying down, mindful sitting, mindful standing, and we're going to talk about all four of those later. You could mindfully look at things. You can mindfully listen to things. These are all ways that you can practice mindfulness anytime. That said, the one that trumps them all by far is mindful breathing. To practice mindful breathing, there are basically two main ways. One is by counting your breaths, and the other is just by following your breaths. And I'm going to go through those. So counting your breath is just what it sounds like. There's a way to do this with basically like training wheels. The first step is to count 1 on the in breath, 2 on the out breath, 3 on the in breath, 4 on the out breath. So you're actually counting twice per breath cycle. And this is the easiest way to count because you don't have to remember your number for very long. And you count up to 10, which in this case would be 5 full breaths, and then you start over and count it at 1. The other basic way to be mindful of your breathing is what's called following the breathing. And here you don't do any counting, but what you do is you sort of narrate the breathing in your mind. When you're breathing in, you say, breathing in, I'm aware I'm breathing in, to yourself. And when you're breathing out, you say, breathing out, I'm aware I'm breathing out. And it's very simple practice. This is basically the only practice you ever need, these two things, if you want to train yourself to be mindful of your thoughts and your actions and what's going on around you.
So where does the Om thing come in?
The Om, it's kind of interesting you would bring that up. With all of these things I'm talking about now, I was one of the diehard skeptics of ever. I mean, of course, we all scramble over each other to say I'm more skeptical than you, but
I'd be skeptical of that.
But at any point in my life before I started doing these things, if any mention came up of Buddhist teachings or Oms or meditation, my reaction to all of it was the same, which was this is just poppycock mystic bullshit. But I had no idea what it was. Now, among the many things I've learned is that when it comes to Om or how to sit in meditation and all these things, they all have a physiological explanation. And it's really cool. So Om, here's how it works. Let's say that your objective was to exhale very slowly and very evenly. One way to do it would be to just concentrate on it. Like right there, I just finished off the end of an exhale, very mindfully. Another way would be to hum. Anytime you're humming at one pitch, you are automatically exhaling, and you're automatically exhaling at an even rate. And so Om is, you could almost think of it as a trick. It's a way to trick yourself into a perfectly smooth, long, even exhale if you hold the pitch all the way to the end.
So forget about all this mystical stuff. There's actually a practical reason for doing it.
Oh, it's amazingly practical. And there's a practical explanation of in that sense. The actual practical reason for doing it is by forcing your mind away from its own wrenching, ongoing thinking. What happens is you gain two benefits from that. In the moment, you gain the benefit of not being consumed by your thoughts. And then when you do it, you can't help but notice that you really are consumed by your thoughts, but only when you step outside them. And this is why counting is so great. And let me just finish off the other form of counting, which is you take the training wheels off, and what you do is you count once per breath cycle. So the easiest way is to count on the out breath. So you would breathe in, and then as you're breathing out, you would try to remember the number 1. And then you would breathe in, and when you breathe out, you're on the number 2. And you go to 10 and start over at 1. What will happen when you do this, and this doesn't matter if you're doing it your first time or you've been doing it for 10 years, there will be times when you lose the count. And that's fine. There are many things to learn from this. One is you don't think to yourself, oh, I failed. What you think to yourself is, oh, I've lost the count. But the thing is, you won't realize you lost the count at the moment you lost it. It'll happen a little after. And that will be the wake-up call. That's how you can recognize, wow, I am so consumed by my thoughts, I literally can't count to 10. And when I started doing this, I was challenged. I was like mad. I was like, you got to be kidding me. Is my mind, I used to think of myself as a smart guy. Is my mind so weak that I can't count to 10? And I would try it, and sure enough, I couldn't do it. Now, one word I want to throw in here is very important, is the word concentration.
It's very hard to concentrate on your breathing when you got some guy talking all the time.
It is. In fact, we're going to talk about listening, which is another entire mode of mindfulness. Why, were you just trying to give it a try there?
I was
How'd
trying.
It go? Okay, let's do it.
I think I got up to 4 before I finally said, this guy's just never going to shut up and let me breathe. So
let's give it a try. Let's just see what happens here. We'll do it together. I'll go like this, meaning inhale with my hand and down for exhale. And we're going to go to 3 full breaths. So the idea of what we're going to do here isn't so much to count, because we're going to get to 3. But what I want you to do is just be aware. I want you to concentrate on your lungs, exhaling. Concentrate on your actual body, and then notice how much other thinking comes in as you go. Okay, ready?
So everybody else out there, play along.
Okay, we're going to go in right now.
That was very quiet.
It is quiet. Just picture how, if you had the ability to do that right after a bad beat, or right after some guy says something to you at the poker table that really agitated the shit out of you, and if you had the skill to stop your mind right in its worst time and say, I am aware right now that I'm angry. I'm aware right now that I'm tilted. And right now I'm going to practice this practice of calming myself, of bringing myself to the moment and focusing entirely on myself and my body. And to do this, I'm going to use the tool of breathing. And I'm just going to breathe in and breathe out. And when you breathe out, you go slow and you empty your lungs all the way out, nice and slow and evenly. And what happens here is you're using your mind to calm your body physically. And then when you calm your body, that also calms your mind. So it's like a circle of effect. One does to the other does the other, and the breathing, this is why these words, they sound sort of hokey when you read them, but what they say in the teaching is that the breath is the link between the mind and the body. You divert energy toward the breath with your mind, or you can think of it as starting with your body. It doesn't matter. It brings it all together, because the effect of exhaling slowly and evenly will be to calm you. That is undeniable. And it will calm your body, which will calm your mind, which will calm your body, which will calm your mind. And if you can do this at the moments of peak agitation, of course you get huge benefit. Now here's the challenge. The moments when you're most agitated are exactly those moments when you're most lost in your thoughts, in your mind. So that's the most difficult time to do it. That's why much of this episode is going to be about practices we can do away from the poker table to train our mind to calm itself. That's why I asked you, like, tell me about something that tilts you, in regular life. So now let's replay that scene. You're late, right?
Right.
You're late and you're upset. And so you're driving to someplace. You're late, and this guy cuts you off, and he makes it worse.
There's nothing I can do about it.
Exactly.
The light's going to change when it changes. I'm going to get there when I get there.
Can you hear how much quieter your voice is right now just from doing those 3 breaths? I can.
I'm going to enjoy the meal if I let it go.
Yeah.
But I'm still going to have to eat the meal regardless of whether I let it go or not.
Right.
She's going to be there. I'm looking forward to seeing her. And she's going to be okay with it once she realizes I'm okay. She's not going to be worried anymore.
Yeah.
We're going to laugh. We're going to enjoy the meal. And
you're
that
going
asshole truck driver is someday going to get run over by a big
He'll get his
dump truck.
So at that moment, though, when you're sitting there in your car, this is what they, when they talk about
That's what
suffering.
karma's all about, isn't it? That someday he's going to get his.
Well, actually, that's another grand misconception about the whole word karma, that there's some sense of justice in it, which there isn't. So you're sitting at the light. You're at that moment of tilt, right? And when we talk about relieving suffering, we're talking about that is the suffering. The stuff in your head at that moment is what we call suffering. So if you want that to not be there, remember we talked about snapping your fingers and having it go away. Here's what you do. Instead of being consumed in your thoughts, you train yourself to step outside your thoughts by using your breathing. The breathing is the tool. So you catch yourself, you say, oh, I'm aware of my anger. That's the first key step. You have to be aware that you're upset. And then you can use logic, which is good, which you did, which you said, nothing I do right now is going to get me there any faster. Okay? Now, knowing that doesn't make the angst go away, but it's a big step. So the first steps are knowing what to do and then stopping yourself and doing it. And it takes effort. And what you do is you breathe. You sit up straight as you can in your car, and you tell yourself, right now, I'm going to do one big inhale and one really long, slow exhale. And at the end of that one, you might redecide, hey, I'm going to do another one. You don't even have to tell yourself every time, I'm going to do 5, I'm going to do 10. You can say, I'm going to do 1. Because doing 1 is infinitely more than none. And I can guarantee you that every single time you have the wherewithal and just the spunk and the drive to do one deep, long exhale when you're upset. Now we'll go back to door A, door B from the earlier episode. Behind door A is not doing the exhale. Behind door B is what happens if you do the exhale. You will be happier behind door B. That is just the way it is. And that's why this is such a vital practice. And
if you do it 2-3 times, the light will change and you're fine anyway.
Yeah, and then you're just bebopping along and you're like, wow. Now, that doesn't mean you're going to be happy the rest of your life. This is the way it goes. The mind will have its way with you again. Even if you've been sitting on a mountain in Tibet for 20 years, it will come back. It will take charge. But the more you do it, the more practice you get at it, then the better you get at it, and the more breaths you'll be able to string together. Mindful breaths. One of the things I realized early on is that I was like, okay, what I want to do basically is increase the percentage of mindful breaths in my life over any minute or hour. Now, it just so happens that we breathe about 1,000 times an hour. When I learned that stat, I was like, man, oh man. The overwhelming thing that hit me when I started doing this was I was 44 when I started. I had lived 44 years basically without taking a mindful breath in my life. You could say that after a coughing seizure, or so there are certain physical things that come up where all of a sudden you're gasping for breath, and at that moment you could say, well, I'm mindful of my breathing, I'm really aware of it. But except for that, I'd been going through all the days of my life never aware of my breathing at all. And as soon as I started doing that, it teaches you immediately, you can only experience it, that you really are wrapped in your mind all the time. And so what I want to do is be aware of an increasing percentage as each day, week, year goes on, is keep raising the percentage of mindful breaths that I experience throughout my days. So the intensive training to do this is what's called meditation. Now, meditation is one of those words that has different meanings at different times. It's of all of these words, I didn't know really what any of them really meant until I started doing it. But it's important to think of this. The closest synonym in the English language to the word meditation is concentration. It's concentration. Anytime you are concentrating on what's going on right now, that's synonymous to meditation. So you could be driving along and you could start concentrating on your breathing. That's the best thing because it's always there. Or you could concentrate on your foot. You could say, I am aware that I'm pushing down on the gas pedal with my foot. Wow, look at that. I've got 5 toes coming out of this thing that's on the end of my leg that's attached to the rest of me. That's concentration in the moment. You could be driving along and you could realize, you know what? I haven't paid attention to the sounds around me at all. I think I'll do that now. And so you could start listening to stuff that's going on. That's concentration. You're bringing your mind to the moment. You're focusing. That's what focus is. And obviously these are great skills for poker. And the reason that poker is so wonderful as a topic related to all this is because it's so distracting. We're constantly being pulled into the past by that asshole or that beat or that bad luck or man, I'm running out of money. Okay, and we're constantly worried about, oh my God, it's there's 3 tables less in this tournament. What's going to happen? Or I'm going broke. Or my wife expected me home 2 hours ago. Or there's constant anxiety generated in our mind by poker. That's what makes poker such a great opportunity to practice this stuff. So you can practice these concentration exercises in real life and apply them to poker. And or you can practice them while you're playing poker and use profit as your sole motive for doing these things, and then they will spill over into your regular life.
I've got a long way to go.
Don't we all?
The dude abides.
The dude abides, exactly. So Wayne, you want to hear another one of my aha moments?
That'd be great. I love this. It's kind of like the opposite of a bad beat story.
Oh, it is. This is definitely the opposite of that. When I've been reading about these various things, it's kind of like how people say, oh, I remember where I was when Kennedy was shot or whatever. I can remember the very first time I learned this next concept because it knocked me over, and that is that we are always doing one of 4 things in our lives. We're either lying down, walking, sitting, or standing. Now they don't count running for whatever reason, and I don't ever run, so this works great for me.
Oh no! I
don't do that.
I only run when someone's chasing me. He has a very good reason, and he's very large.
Well, so then you would be mindful of running away from him. So you don't need to worry.
I'm much more mindful of him than
right.
running.
So what's so awesome about this is that if the objective is to work more and more mindfulness into our lives, all you have to do is practice being mindful when you're standing as one thing, practice being mindful when you're sitting, practice being mindful when you're lying down, and when you're walking, and you got it all covered. That means anywhere, anytime, you will always be able to attend to the here and now through this practice. And this was of particular interest to me as a poker player since I spend all my time sitting. So I'm going to go more into the sitting in a second. I'm going to talk just a second about the other 3. So something to try is lie down on your back. You can even do it in bed, but do it on the floor is fine. And make yourself symmetrical with your legs straight, arms at your side, and do some breathing. And just even 3 breaths or count to 10 and just pay attention to your abdomen going up and down. And there is sort of a magical thing can happen, which is even if you're tired, or if you're impersonating a tired person, even if you're tired and you're lying there in bed, which you would think would be a posture that would make you fall asleep, the act of focusing on your breathing for even 3 breaths, really focusing on it, can wake you up, and you will actually become more vitalized. Is that a word?
I think it's revitalized.
More revitalized.
Well, I don't know. I think
but
one you made up.
you'll be more vibrant just by that. Even though you're lying down in what we think of as a resting posture, the act of concentrating on your breathing will give you more energy. It's like a neat little magic trick. So that's what I mean by being mindful while you're lying down, is being aware of yourself when you're lying down. Now, a real big one is walking, because we do spend a lot of time walking. And so a practice to do at home is you practice walking very slowly, and you do some number of measured breaths with each step. So you might breathe once every 3 steps or once every step, and you walk slower than you normally would, just back and forth in your house, concentrating totally on your feet on the ground and your breathing. And this is an exercise you can do. And so what happens is you practice that at home, and then when you're out at the grocery store or you're walking to the casino, when you get out of the car, instead of your mind going and whirring around, you say, hey, I'm going to do a little bit of mindful walking now. And you concentrate on your walking. You literally concentrate on the here and now, on the walking.
But I would suggest, folks, first of all, practice this at home when the girlfriend isn't there.
Right.
If you're going to do the real slow, measured breathing walking, definitely don't do this in public. Okay? Not until you are so completely and totally confident in yourself that you don't care what anybody else thinks about you, because you're going to look like a really weird guy walking very slowly through the casino.
That is very true, and it is possible to get to the point where you truly don't care what anybody thinks if you do this practice.
I'm just doing this as a public service for our listeners out there, okay?
But seriously, even for walking through the casino, let's say you just got busted up and you're walking to the cage to get more money. Instead of just walking mindlessly, I'm not saying walk super slow, but if you just go 5% slower than you normally would, that means you're in 100% mindfulness.
They're not going to notice that.
They won't notice it.
Okay.
And you will. You will notice it
because
in
you're
an
mindful.
enormous way. Right. It's the difference between being pulled along by your mind and all of your negative energy and all of your negative thoughts, or seizing control of them. And all it takes is walking slightly slower than you otherwise would, and you're at 100% mindfulness.
And
So
it'll keep you from dumping a cocktail on somebody's head.
it will. You'll be paying attention. You'll be watching this, that, everything. So that's mindful walking. And then mindful standing, you can practice that anywhere. It used to be if I was walking into town to get a coffee or whatever, I'd be waiting for the light to change, and I'd be out in the street looking to see if there's cars coming, and maybe I was going to zip across, or I'd be leaning on a pole. My body was just all over the place. Now what I do is I stand straight and I just breathe, and I'm mindful standing, and that's what that is. And you can practice that anywhere. It brings you right back to the moment.
And people driving down the road go, hey, that guy is practicing mindful standing.
Well, they're probably not mindful enough to even notice I'm over there.
I'm hoping. I'm really hoping.
So now the biggest one of all, by far, is mindful sitting, for 2 reasons. One, that's the posture that we're in when we play poker. So we practice mindful sitting anywhere, anytime, and we can practice it while we're playing. And another reason why mindful sitting is the big one is that if any of you do go on with this and do what's called formal meditation, you're always sitting. It's a sitting posture. For anyone interested in learning more about real meditation or actually getting started with it, I'm going to add a page to my website, which is tommyangelo.com. You just go to the upper right of the navigation bar on any page, and there's a catch-all drop-down menu there called blog/herb/about me, and I'm going to add a page called Med 101, standing for Meditation 101. And I'm just going to put some names of books there that were very helpful for me when I was getting started, and that I still refer back to a lot, and some articles that I think are really good. And this page might grow. I might just keep adding on some things I find here and there, and links, and maybe some things I write or things I read that I think are very helpful. And also at my blog, I have a category of blog posts there called Mindfulness, where I occasionally write some things related to these topics. So those are a couple resources anyone interested in getting started with this stuff can refer to. But even if you don't do any of that, or even if you're not interested in any of that, anyone, any poker player can do these practices, especially the one I'm about to talk about. And I do believe it will improve the score of any poker player and reduce suffering. And that's one of the reasons it increases the score. It kind of goes together. So, mindful sitting. What this means is that you pull away from the back of the chair, and this applies to in the casino or at home playing online. And there's two aspects to mindful practice. There's posture and there's breathing. There's posture and breathing. Wayne, what are the two aspects?
Breathing and posture.
You got it. That's it. And so the posture means you concentrate on the lower vertebrae in your back, and you have them come straight out of your hips, stock straight up. And you arrange your legs symmetrically, your arms symmetrically, and you kind of picture like the Egyptian sculptures along the Nile, and they're just sitting there. So your spine is up, you're not touching the back, your feet are flat on the floor. That's the posture of mindful sitting. And then you breathe. You just be aware of your breathing. Now, if you're multitabling, it's really difficult to truly have even 10 or 15% of your awareness on your breathing. So, but it is very easy to keep awareness on the posture. And the awareness on the posture is really enough. It's going to be a huge improvement over not doing the posture. This is that door A, door B thing. Now, I'm not suggesting that you would play an hour and a half session and sit there stock straight the whole time. That's just unrealistic. What we're talking about is incremental steps. Any amount of effort you put toward doing the breathing and the posture is going to be an improvement. If you do it for 30 seconds per day, that's better than no seconds. If you do it for 60 seconds a day, that's twice as good as 30 seconds. It's absolutely linear.
That's outstanding. That's straightening up.
It is. You straighten up. Here's the thing about this. Let's say that you were playing a long time and you're really unfocused and tilted even, or just lazy, your mind's lazy, and you make a really bad play, a horrendous misclick. What is one of the most natural things we do without thinking about it?
Throw the mouse across the room.
Right. Yeah, after we get the mouse.
Oh, okay.
is one of the things that we do as humans very naturally, anytime we know we're out of focus, is we sit up straight. It's kind of like the rubbing of hands, like, okay, I'm going to start fresh. I'm going to sit up straight in my chair and bear it down and get back to it. So all I'm suggesting here is do the thing that we would do naturally, except don't wait for disasters. And just do it anyway, like all the time.
Okay, so Tommy, how is this going to make me a better poker player? How can I use this mindfulness at the poker table?
Well, I'll give you a couple examples. The overall thing has to do with tilt, not suffering, playing the A game more often. But within the specifics of the game, there are quite a few things where just being attentive make a big difference. At table poker, for example, looking left. We're going to talk about that more in a later episode, but when the betting comes around before the flop, if you're looking at the guy on your left and you can get some kind of read on what he's going to do, this is real poker. This is new information that you can collect that will sometimes make a difference on your decision. Now, if you're
especially if he's got a whole stack in his hand.
Right. You look over and you see this guy's ready to pop it, and let's say he's a tight player and you had a marginal hand, to muck it. This can make a huge difference in your results. So it's easy to see that looking left is a good idea. It's something I've known as a good idea for many, many years, and I am never, ever satisfied with the frequency I look left. Even though I do all these mindfulness practices and I do all this stuff, I still never do it enough. That just goes to show you how hard it is to truly be paying attention. But when I'm at my very best, when the cards are dealt, I'm reminding myself, okay, I'm going to look left. Now, this is where the mindfulness practice comes in immediately, because anytime you do mindful sitting, mindful breathing, mindful walking, anything, what you're doing is you're wrenching your mind away from the past and the future, and you're coming back to the moment. If the cards are being dealt and you're thinking about your bad beat, you're not going to be mindful enough to consciously look left. However, if your mind is clear, you will. So anytime you sit up, breathe, what you're doing, it's almost, you could think of as like you're kind of erasing your mind. You're trying to create that no mind state so that you can consciously fill it with what you want to be there, which is, okay, I want to look left now. Another example is anticipation. We talked about the importance of anticipation. When the guy check raises you and you're like, oh no, now what? That means you were mindless. If you were completely mindful at the time you bet, you would have been thinking, okay, what am I going to do if he check raises? That's a very hard thing to do. This is the type of thing that will be improved as you improve your mindfulness practice, because you'll be focused on the moment more often.
One thing that I have found in being around you now, not only is Tommy my mentor and my best friend on the whole world, we spend a lot of time together, and we laughingly say we're twin sons from different mothers. We are so much alike, but one place where we are radically different, and this has shown up because of what you have learned and what you practice. I pride myself on being able to do 15 things at one time.
Mm-hmm.
You do one thing at a time. Now,
Yeah.
this is not the easiest thing to do, folks, and it isn't the easiest thing to be around, but he literally does practice what he's talking about. He does single tasking. All of us think that it's such a great thing to multitask. Why do you single task? Why do you make me nuts?
Well, the reason I single task is because I don't want to miss anything. Like, let's just use the example earlier when we were sitting down to eat. Tell him what happened.
He made me turn off the music.
Well, yeah, that's right. But it was also a video.
Right.
But I mean, it was a lot of stuff coming out of your
it was
computer.
a little more than, but
yeah.
He literally, said, "Please turn it off," because I guess
I didn't want to miss my food.
Didn't want to miss his food.
Yeah. So here's what happens: is if I'm listening to music while I'm eating, or if there's music on while I'm eating, when I'm finished, I recognize that I was non-mindful of something the entire time. I either want to go listen to the song again, or I want to eat my food again, because one of them got missed. And this brings up a whole other mindfulness practice, which is eating, which is a great one. And one of the taught practices is, some of this stuff sounds really zany. It did to me too until I started doing it, but it's called the raisin meditation. And you take 3 raisins, and you put one of them in your mouth, and you chew it until it's completely gone. And then you pay attention to each chew. And then you do another raisin, you do another raisin. And it's hard because your thoughts will come up. And the thoughts come up. And what you say is, you don't think, okay, there's thought, there's a feeling, there's an emotion that's bad. What you do is you just observe it. You say, okay, I'm thinking about that hand I played now. Now I'm going to return to chewing my raisin. And you'll notice that the mind just keeps ripping you away from that raisin over and over and over. So once I started getting into mindful eating, I started really appreciating my food and the act of eating. I mean, it used to be that if I was eating alone, I had to have a book in front of me or the TV on. I couldn't stand it. I used to think of eating as just something I was doing in between other activities. Now I stop everything. I try as best I can, it's hard, to pay attention to every bite that goes in. Now, because I do that so often, when you sat down with the computer on, it was like, I can't stand it. It's too much. Sensory overload.
So my reply to him was, okay, so you're going to have to keep up the conversation. He didn't.
Well, I was
It
busy.
is strictly single tasking.
You can think of playing 10 games at once as one task, though. That's one thing I have learned. But playing 10 games at once and IMing, that's two tasks. That's two mental applications of the mind. So I strongly urge, online players that when you're playing, you just decide I'm going to play now. When somebody IMs you, you either say not now or just don't reply. I mean, what the hell? And so then what you do is when you finish your set, then you compartmentalize your time and you say, now I'm going to IM. Now here's the beauty of it. If you're listening to this, you might think, oh, but I can do that, right? But what happens is you
Well,
don't. What?
it's not whether you can, but whether you should.
And if you're maxing out your life, it's like, what is the purpose of all these things? One, we want to make money. Two, we want to be happy. Three, we want to have good relationships with our friends. Four, we want to enjoy the moments as they go by. None of those things is served optimally if you're playing and IMing. And here's why. You're not giving your best attention to your friend. You can be a better conversationalist if you just do the conversation. And when people know that you're giving them their full attention, it's like when my buddy Alex calls, he knows that I will not answer the phone unless I am willing to stop absolutely everything I'm doing. If I'm in at my computer and he calls and I answer the phone, I literally walk into the other room, I sit in my most comfortable chair, and I prepare to completely listen to him and completely respond to him. And you can take that same approach even if it's IMing. And you'll notice that you benefit tremendously because you're gaining more from the conversation, you give more, and it's just a beautiful thing. So what I highly recommend to my online clients is that they play when they're playing, and they IM and email and surf the web when they're surfing the web, and just don't mix them.
Plus, it's plus EV.
And right, of course, there's always that. It is going to make your betting plays more likely to be the best you can do. That seems obvious, but just because it's obvious doesn't mean we're going to do it.
Outstanding.
Have you ever been in a conversation and someone's talking and our natural impulse is to think of what we're going to say next? They say something that makes us think of something. But have you ever gotten away from a conversation and you thought, boy, I talk too much. I wish I had the ability to just pay more attention to what
You're
there's...
talking to me,
Yeah, I know.
asking
That
me
is kind of a funny
that
question.
question?
Well, here's a
Like,
whole new concept for you to consider.
obviously.
So here's how you can use all of these things we've talked about in ways that are just immensely beneficial and ultimately be practicing your poker. And here's what you do. When you're in a conversation and the other person starts talking, you try to pay attention to your breathing. And what will happen is the mind energy that would normally be thinking about what am I going to say next, or yeah, I have a story like that, or he's wrong, all of these thoughts, you'll be more likely to actually be hearing them and hearing what they're saying. And it's a beautiful thing when you can keep the conversation on the other person but not be faking it because you're actually interested. And that happens when your own thoughts aren't being stirred up by what they say. So a guy says, hey, I went fishing the other day and I caught, a big fish. And instead of you saying, oh yeah, I went fishing 2 days ago and I caught a big fish too, you say, what kind of fish was it? This is what will happen if you really listen to somebody. If you're, instead of being in your own mind, you're truly paying attention to them. And the thing I love about it is it's one of those things that was the huge aha moments for me. When I started doing this, it forced me to realize that, yeah, I am consumed in my own reality all of the time. And the way to break that chain of churning thought is the tool of mindful breathing.
Well, that is terrific advice because I'm certainly not going to make them more interesting.
That's right.
They're never going to be more interesting. So anything that I can do is perfectly happy with me, man. Woo! Because they're dull. So we talked about this as being something that you can't just do it at the table. You have to do it all the time. Before you can really be good at it when you're actually playing. So when do
Right.
we practice this?
Right. Well, you can practice it all the time. The best thing to do is take a look at those times in your life that are what you find to be the most agitating. It could be certain people you know that always agitate you. It could be while you're driving, certain things that really piss you off, or waiting in line is a great example. So you, with awareness, you say, okay, this is a situation that agitates me, and then you say, this is an opportunity for me to practice working on not being agitated.
Like listening to a bad beat story.
Listening to bad beat story is a great example. Uh, I used to be terrible. I was so bad at listening to bad beat stories that I would just be obviously annoyed and jittery and wanting to go anywhere else, and I would just tell guys right out in the middle, look, I can't listen to this. I mean, it used to just tilt me like crazy. And now I use that as a practice. When a guy launches into a bad beat story, I just stand there and I'm listening. And it's not fake listening. I'm actually hearing what he says. I'm listening to every card, every word, but that's because I've been doing this for 5 years. But I used to use that as one of my main practices. That's a great example.
You know what my thing is about bad beats? If you're going to tell me a bad beat story, make it interesting. Do
Right.
something unusual,
Yeah.
okay? Just because the guy sucked out on a two-outer, that's not interesting.
Right.
If you make it interesting, I'll listen to it.
There needs to be more to the story. Being bored is something that can be eliminated through mindful practice because you get in the habit of just observing what's around you all the time, no matter what it is. And it doesn't have to be a case of, I'm looking, I'm trying, I'm looking at a tree. Okay, I'm still bored. Well, just keep doing it. Look at the tree, focus on your breathing, keep doing the practice. The main thing about this is it does take time before you really reap the benefits. An analogy I like to think of is like if you're trying to lose weight. Let's say you want to lose 20 pounds. Well, going in, it's going to take a long, sustained effort to do it. But if you do it, you're going to be a lot happier. You're going to feel good about the accomplishment. You're going to feel good moment to moment as you walk around. Doing these practices is exactly the same way. You could think of what you're doing is you're shedding mental weight. You're losing mental weight. Understanding that eating less food is going to make you lose weight doesn't make it happen. Understanding that doing these practices is going to make you tilt less, and make more money, and make you easier to just enjoy moment-to-moment life. Understanding that isn't going to make it happen. You do actually have to do the work to lose the mental weight.
So I've been working on this. I really have tried to take this concept in. Let me tell you a story and see if you think of how well I'm doing.
Okay.
I had a dinner the other night with my girlfriend, and I cooked dinner. And I made soup, actually gumbo. I make the best gumbo in the world. And I had this big bowl of gumbo, and I'm carrying it to the table. And it's really full, and it's really hot. And there's nothing that can concentrate your mind like a hot bowl of soup in your fingers.
That is a great example of naturally occurring mindfulness. You're totally focused on that.
In
That's
the
the type
moment.
of right. That's the type of concentration we're talking about.
So I don't want to spill it, and I want to look like an idiot. And she's talking to me, and I would love to carry on the conversation, but I've got my mind full right now of this bowl of gumbo in my burning fingers, and I'm trying to get there as quick as I can. And I get there, and just as I'm putting it on the table, I tilt it and it spills.
You tilted. It's a whole new kind of tilt.
But instead of going, son of or feeling totally humiliated or apologizing, or I just said, oh well.
Beautiful.